Welcome to The Ancient Light of the Yeshua Teachings, 8-episode mini-podcast with actress, musician, and author Verenia Nia Peoples, and ancient Aramaic wisdom keeper Dale Allen Hoffman. Episode 6, Be Perfect as Your Father in Heaven is Perfect.
Hey everyone, welcome. Which number is this, Dale? This is
5.
5.
5 out of the 7. Yeah. 2 left.
And we will be complete geniuses by the time, and completely in alignment when we complete the 7.
Well, if that was the truth, then I must have hit that a while ago, but no, I don't know. But yeah. The book sort of mirrors a lot of what we've been doing in the calls. It's the purpose of it is essentially it's like the way I view it, at least. Let me put this into words people understand. It's almost like the whole Jesus story is not even necessarily the story, but the teachings are off. They're sort of off kilter. They're like a dimpled Chad in Florida when I voted like 12 years ago. And and this is the truth, when I lined up the little tabs on top for the little punch holes, this is about what, 18 or 19 years ago this happened. Like when you lined it up so that the tabs on top held it, the punch holes were off. So you had to pull the card off the tabs at the top and kind of shift it sideways, and then everything lined up down below. And of course, if somebody's blind or whatever,
Wow.
They're not going to understand
Was
that.
that the recount in Florida that year?
Yeah. But it wasn't even it was Pinellas I was in. It wasn't even one of the counties that had the problem, supposedly. Yeah. But anyway, it's like the Jesus story. It's enough of the pegs are off that you're just not going to get it. I don't care if you even go to a theological seminary. I think you'll get really close. It requires going back to the original language. And once you start sort of calibrating, ideas like spirit and repent and all these different things that we've been covering, and you start shifting the map back into position, there's a certain point where it's almost like enough of the teachings line up that it goes zoom, and something activates.
Yeah.
That's really what the essence of the book is going to be about, is hitting those key 11 or 12 points where when you understand those, the whole thing goes, whoa, and starts singing.
Right.
So,
yeah. I had someone comment on... I posted something on Instagram and it said something about, reading with your heart, not just your head. And someone said, I don't know who this Verenia person is, because it's on Nia's Instagram.
Yeah.
But she doesn't know what she's talking about, because in Jeremiah, it says the heart is, it just talked about how.
Oh yeah, I know. No, I've never heard any of that before. Actually, I was kind of going back and forth in a positive way with a friend of mine down in Florida today who used to be one of those huge mega TV preachers, and he walked away from it. And I'm not dropping names, but he left it. And then it's amazing that when he left, they, the establishment were like vultures on him. So everything he would try to do, they would like attack him and try to pull him down. And he and I tried collaborating for really it stopped about 3 or 4 years ago when he realized anything he tries, they're just going to grab on and try to pull him down. But the amazing thing was, whenever people would attack him, it was always quoting scripture.
Yes.
It was just, it was almost like there was no actual thought involved.
Right.
It was all just, and I know this for a fact. I know they actually teach people how to copy and paste, and to know the Bible well enough that you've got the electronic version and you can just copy and paste. Yeah. And basically it teaches you how to be a troll. It teaches you how to be what do they call them now? A Karen. Sorry to anybody named Karen, but it's like, yeah, it's unbelievable. But there's no thought, but we weren't really told to think. We were told, actually, especially going back a ways.
We were taught how to reply with certain things. And I think that's the absolute reason why we can't, if we're really going to be fully accountable for what we know as we go, and be willing to continue to learn more, We have to be willing to let go of what we thought we knew, and open and include the heart. You really, with everything people shove in, through the ear and through the intellect, you could pull any little thing. I don't care what scripture you pick, you can find another one to go against it. It's you can't take it out of that alignment that you're talking about, where it really is just like, oh, if we put these like through the prism of the heart, this is what it means.
And in the context too. It's so easy to pull something out of context, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, actually. But I want to hit something that, I think last week was really great, because each week we've been trying to open it more and more to interaction with everyone. And I sort of, in the last few weeks, I've done my best to essentially make my statement and then sort of shut up and see what that stirs. And I know that last week's was pretty raw for a lot of people. Actually, I got messages after about blessed are the meek. Of course, that doesn't mean doormat. And I think this week's is going to probably dredge up just as much.
For those who weren't on the call last week, do you want to give a little snippet about just
No, they should have been here. I mean, what am I supposed to just regurgitate the same thing over and over?
No, just the little piece about blessed are the meek.
Well, last week was, what was really blessed are the meek. What did that mean? And I said how I've had a lot of, especially specifically battered women approach me over the years, and that was their number one question was, what does that meek thing mean? And we talked about how meek, makike, or makikeia in Aramaic, isn't about a shrinking back. It's actually closer to the word humility, which is where the Latin root humus is the source of that humus, which is that layer of earth that's porous. There's air and water can get through. It's not about the shrinking back meekness. It's about that expansion. And that quote that I often give from the Lakota, they say, let the wind blow through you, which is a powerful one, which Don, I got from Joe, of course, Joe Marshall, but I've gotten so much from him. But and let me actually throw that out there too. If anybody, like last week, I was mentioning Crazy Horse Tashunko Bitko and talking about the Lakota. And at one point, Don put I think he put the one Crazy Horse book up to the screen. And I've got a whole section of like Joseph Marshall stuff. But if you've ever seen there was a mini series called Into the West. It was 6 episodes on TNT back around 2000, 2001 or so. And it was directed, Steven Spielberg produced. It was huge. And but the narrator of the entire series was Joseph Marshall III. He played a character called Loved by the Buffalo, which went through different incarnations. And there was the talent in it was like 6 independent films, really, is what it was, each directed by a different director. Anyway, it's something worth looking up. You're not going to find it streaming, but I will say I did find it on YouTube recently. Although what's on YouTube has some content deleted that was deleted for the DVD version. They deleted certain battle scenes for the classroom version, which is what went on the DVD, because they didn't think that our children could handle the violence of it. I'm like, geez, they don't get that enough in like all of their games and shows and things. Like, God forbid you show them violence based on something real. You can't do that. It's got to be fake. So, anyway, it's just an incredible piece of work. Into the West, it's called. So that's what we did last week. And this week sort of dovetails with that, I would say, actually, in a way. I think it's something that's constantly in the press, is the idea of perfection. And unfortunately, I'll say this, the actual idea of perfection, as far as we're aware, first started with Aristotle. And he actually had sort of like a checklist of something that is at a point of completion, or something that it needs nothing else to be added unto it. And it's the best version, that you're not going to be able to find another one that's better than that one. And and you can look up Aristotle, but You probably heard of that guy. I think he was in the Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure movie, but along with Socrates. But my point in this is the ancient ideas of perfection are a lot different than the modern ideas of perfection. It's really come to be something with no flaw, to not have a flaw. I'm going to share. Am I allowed to share a screen?
I
Did you give me
already
permission?
made you
Did you
co-host.
make me a host?
I did.
No, I would probably need to open it before I could actually share it. Let me do that first. Okay, there we go. So this is, there you go. Can you read that? Everybody sees that. Tell me what that says. Everybody's just shaking their heads. Okay, that's good enough. So this is actually what we're looking at here is Matthew 5, Mattai 5, 548 is down below specifically. This word here, it sounds like this, gamera, gamera or gamira. This is that, we've heard it all. Be perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect. Perfect, interesting. And, here's the word here. If you look down here in the text, if you can see where I'm circling here, that's gamera in the text here, and then it's in a slightly different gamer here, which is a shorter. So this is be perfect, gamera, as your Father in heaven is gamir, perfect. I'm going to go off that screen really quick. So I'm going to look at what this actually means. The Greek word actually is teleos. Now, both of them actually have a very similar meaning. When we think of perfection today, of course, like I said, we have that no flaw, something that has no flaw, something that is almost like you polish something to the point where it has no perfections, but it's got perfections. I love what Les Brown said. He's like, we should take the word perfection out of the dictionary. He's like, it doesn't exist. And it's true. He was like, practice doesn't lead to perfect, it leads to improvement. There's always improvement. There's always improvement. A dear friend of mine, I think I mentioned him on one of the calls, the guy that wrote the foreword to my book, Steve Vai, he just had, I'm kind of messing with him because the other day he had to have surgery on his hand.
Wow.
After having surgery on like his shoulder or something like that a month ago, the same day as his wife Pia. But what was he doing? He was holding the same damn guitar chord for 20 minutes, trying to see if he could get into some kind of altered state and do some sort of new technique thing. As soon as he took his hand away from his guitar, we're talking about one of the greatest guitarists that have ever walked the earth, by the way.
You have to look him up, Stevie Vai.
Yeah, Steve Vai. If you've ever seen the movie Crossroads with Ralph Macchio, he's the guy that plays the devil's guitar player at the end of the movie and battles him. But all of a sudden, Steve realized his thumb, something was not right, and he had sprained it. But he had actually ripped some of the muscle off of the bone in a few places. So now the world's greatest guitarist can't play for 2 months. But that idea, he's an amazing example of someone who's not necessarily striving for perfection. He's really clear and focused in his art, and it is art, on the present moment. What is the absolute highest wide open I can reach now in this moment? And it's not necessarily a comparison to the past. He's not comparing himself to other people. It's always some kind of a conscious internal dialogue process that's happening. But that word gamira, that was translated as perfect, be perfect, it actually doesn't mean perfect as in no flaw. What it actually means is whole or complete. Be complete, be whole. The Greek word holos, holy, holos means whole, complete. Funny, it also means full or empty, if you can figure that out. Same with the Aramaic kodash. But amazing when you just shift this from be perfect as in our idea of no flaw versus being whole. And, Nia was, we were talking a little bit about, Bible things out of context. I'll just shove, not that you're going to be able to read any of that there. And I've got things circled on the page here. Because prior to saying to people, be perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect, if you read everything before that in Matthew 5, and of course the beginning of Matthew 5 is the Beatitudes, but what he's talking about here is love your enemies. We talked about that a few weeks ago. He talks about if somebody smacks you on this cheek, turn to the other, smites you. I love the word smite. But everything that leads up to be perfect, none of it is about flaws. None of it is about something that you need to live up to. It's all about embracing those things within our own perception of self that we feel somehow aren't good enough yet, or aren't whole. And of course, it's simply the act of bringing our awareness to those places within ourselves where we feel fragmented, you could say, bringing the actual awareness to that. And I'm going to repeat something I've said in past calls, which is when you allow yourself or another person to be exactly who you are right now in this moment, you allow who you are not to naturally fall away. And it's amazing because when we have the resistance to what seems like it's broken, of course, what's on your mind? Recreating it. We talked about the law of attraction a few weeks ago, and I'm like, if you're talking about attracting a car, what's your affirmation? I don't have a car, because that's what's obvious to you. And it works the same when we're looking within. Now, this Gemira word, there's another place where the word perfection came up, which was 1 John 4:18. And this here is the writings of Paul. Paul was Saul of Tarsus, native Aramaic speaker. A lot of people don't realize that. It was a traveling dude, man. That, if you ever look at a map, an ancient map of Paul's travels, today, it looks like Rick Steves' travel map for travels in Europe or something on PBS. I mean, even today, it blows my mind to see how much he got around. But one of those things that popped up was, what love casts out fear? What's the kind of love? Perfect love casts out fear. Now, another thing too, I don't know how to, let's say, I don't know how to love myself. I don't know how to love my kids properly. I don't know how to love my spouse fully, or I don't have a spouse because I'm not good at loving, or whatever the self chatter is. And then you want to say perfect love casts out fear? Perfect? But again, in this case, actually the words mashamlia, if you hear that, mashamlia, what that actually means, and there's a different form that's mashamla. There's different forms of the word, but it's funny because mashamlia, there's something about that might sound familiar to people. Shamlia, the root sound in Aramaic sounds like this, shlama. The Hebrew word sounds like this, shalom, peace. So perfect love, peaceful love, but what it means is whole. It means complete, full. Even the word peace in the Semitic languages, Aramaic, Hebrew, and Arabic being the most known on a modern basis, the word peace, shlama in Aramaic, shalom in Hebrew, what it actually means is not the absence of conflict. It actually, in truth, means to embrace the fullness of potential, to be able to take those, what we would say, shut off parts of the self and welcome them into the fire, bring them toward the heat of the fire, rather than that way that we push them off to the fringe so that, of course, we can't see them, we can't feel them anymore. We're actually we're welcoming those all into the center so that all of your freak shows within yourself are dancing around that flame. And it's amazing because Yeshua said, those that are near me are near to the fire. Those that are far from me are far from the kingdom. And what's the one thing we were told not to go toward? Fire. Why? Of course, and we talked a few weeks ago, that Gehenna in the Bible, that's translated in the Baptist Bible, I say, but in the NIV, it just says hell, thrown into hell. Mm-hmm. The word was Gehenna. Gehenna is the city trash dump. That's where they took the people that had mental issues, people that had nowhere to live within the walled city of Jerusalem. It's the south side. It's the trench, the valley of Gin Hinnom. And you would actually stand on the walled city and you'd see people warming themselves at the fires of Gehenna. This is where they would burn the trash. It's where they would burn the bodies of people that couldn't afford proper not crucifixion, but proper burial. I think they didn't have a problem. We have some records that say sometimes there was crucifixions in excess of 300 a day in Jerusalem. They had them lined up along the sides of the street because Golgotha was overly full, which is why Golgotha, the hill of the skull, had so many. So anyway, skulls. But what I'm saying is this idea of perfection is total and complete. I almost want to say it's just garbage that we need to let go of. And it's the opposite. Rather than the judgment of imperfection, it's the realization that I don't even like using the word perfect simply because it has so many barbs in it.
I love what you said
But
about
rather than the
embracing the
judgment of
fullness of
perfection,
potential.
what's
Oh,
that?
sorry.
No.
I love what you said about embracing the fullness of potential.
That's what peace is.
Yeah,
And
that's
that's the
beautiful.
opposite of feeling what are we doing to our kids with culture and like with models? And how long is it taking to get did it take to get a real models in Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue?
Yeah.
And still everybody's like, oh my God, no, you're promoting obesity. You're promoting, it's like, amazing to see that. But and I'll even add this too, in Latin, when it goes into Latin, there's perfectio, there's perfectus, and they all come from the root that actually means to complete, to fulfill. Interesting to think about that. I wanted to add another little piece here before we sort of open it up, but another place where this word mashalam pops up happens in the betrayal of Jesus. Without going too deep into it, almost the entire birth and just prior to death storyline of Jesus is Horus of ancient Egypt. I've got so many. Mike knows this book, Astro Theology and Shamanism, a book that goes deep into it. But the idea, such as Anup actually baptized his cousin Horus, and then Anup was beheaded. What a coincidence! And of course, Typhon betrayed Horus, and then of course he hung himself. And this is the ancient Egyptian. It's just a pure coincidence, I'm sure. But what I'm saying here is where it says that Judas betrayed Jesus. I wonder if I have an actual image of that. Let me see what I've got. Actually, I'll pull this up, pull a couple of these up so you can see this is that word that was perfect love, if you can see that. And then, everybody see this image? Yes. Now, of course, we love great art. And actually, it's a funny thing. If you really look at, can I zoom in? If you really look at Judas, he almost looks like he wants to bite Jesus's face off. It's like Night of the Living Dead or some sort of zombie apocalypse thing. But we love, and they don't look too happy there, but we love great art. We love betrayals. You know what this word is here? This is the word that said that he betrayed Jesus. It's mashlam. It's the same word, mashalam. He fulfilled that which was asked of him. There's nothing about a betrayal. The idea of betrayal, again, comes from Horus. And I'll say, even in the Greek, it's paradidomi. And what paradidomi means is this. It means to fulfill. It means to finish. It means to complete. It means to do something that was asked of you. Was it maybe like 15 years ago, there was this big deal. National Geographic hired Marvin Meyer, one of my favorite translators of the Dead Sea Scrolls and all these different Gnostic texts. And everybody was making this big deal about the Gospel of Judas that had come out. Because in the Gospel of Judas, it looked like Judas was one of Jesus's best friends. And in truth, he didn't ask him, there wasn't a betrayal. He did what was asked of him, actually. And there's even a place where in the Gospel of Judas, it's quite profound, where Jesus is saying, Judas, he's like, you see that star? They're looking out on the night sky. He's like, that's your star. I want you to focus on that. And the more you focus on that pinpoint of light, find it within yourself, it's going to expand. And he essentially tells him that, regardless of what happens to your body, you're going to be okay. We're going to be together again, kind of thing. A totally different story from what religion does. But it's amazing to me. And of course, where were they? It was in Gethsemane that he was betrayed. What is Gethsemane? What does everybody think that means? What's Gethsemane? It was a garden, right?
It's garden, yeah.
You know what the word is? What the word actually means? It means olive press. Olive presses were never in gardens. Olive presses were in caves.
Yeah.
And of course, that makes sense. Of course, he's going to hide in a cave if he's trying not to be seen. It's funny how these things happen. But this idea that we're constantly having, think of that whole not perfect, but complete love, all embracing love, that embracing of the fullness of potential, embracing of the fullness of all of that includes the pain and the missteps and the awful things you've done that you think you've done to other people, whatever. And again, welcoming them all inward into the center of your fire. And if you look at the ideas of perfection we get them from parents, we get them from society, we get them from religion, we get them from work, we get them from self. Can you imagine just the idea of realizing that you are already whole and complete exactly as you are? And then from that point, grow. However you feel about yourself, it's what's expanding in your life. So if you're in deep judgment about yourself in your life, what of course are you getting? You're going to get more of what you don't like. Focus on the one thing you don't like about the person you work with, or whoever, and what are you going to get more of? What you don't like. It's funny though, but when you start to change yourself, everything around you changes with that. And it's going to come from a place of balance, from a place of shalom, shlama, from the place of peace, rather than all of the intense judgment. And this is just skating the surface here, because if you really dig deep on the level of what the world has done to our children and what was done to us, and you pull the internet into this whole thing, it's like, sure, it can be a great beacon of hope and light, and it also can be this intense magnification glass of the screwed up things we've already got going on. And again, what do we actually do about it? The things that we actually do about it is to find the place within ourselves where, like Jesus said to Judas, where you focus on that pinpoint of light, find that within yourself, just the tiniest little bit. And a lot of people I work with, especially in my mentoring, some people are, doing all right when they show up. Some people are twisted in a pretzel. And then like several months later, it's not even the same person anymore. But a lot of times the focus is on, in the first call is usually like we focus on the tiniest point of light that we can find, that one little, try to figure out what it is that lights them up and then expand that from within, rather than seeking to somehow find something outside to make yourself perfect. I'm sure, Nia, you've got something I just saw you unmuted yourself, so I'm sure you've got something to throw into this. So
and the interesting thing too is it's a process that never ends. For me, there are, what I get better at is choosing to focus on the light, but there's never a time when I don't somehow move my focus someplace else. It's like the human condition. I can see that light and my entire frequency shifts when I focus on that. And from that place, everything just creates beautifully. And when my focus drifts somewhere else, I can feel it, and more now than ever. For whatever reasons, we can get into that on some other call. But man, it feels exponential, like the fall from grace or whatever you want to call it. It's like, look,
that's part of it, probably.
And focus. And so it's really, really magnified now. Don has a question. He's saying, is complete love different from unconditional love? I don't know if you want to get into that now, but.
No, that's a phenomenal question. What's your take, Don? What do you feel about that? Unmute yourself. There you go.
I'm not used to the term complete love, but I've been very comfortable with the term unconditional love, which means that if I'm trying to love someone, that I don't put any conditions on it.
And that includes loving yourself.
And in fact, I had something I wanted to say last week, but I didn't get in time. Nia had said something about loving oneself. And Nia, I don't remember exactly what it was, but being raised Southern Baptist, I was taught joy, Joy, Jesus first, others second, and yourself last. And it is backwards or whatever.
Backwards.
Yeah.
See, my dad's from the South.
It's so important for me, and I think probably for everybody, to love myself so that I can have what it takes, the infrastructure to love others. And I consider loving others and loving God to essentially be exactly the same thing.
Yeah, it's funny because when you said joy, I'm like, oh, that's awesome. Until you turn it into that acronym, then I was like, ugh. But anyway, for me, I would say unconditional and complete love, they're probably essentially the same thing. But I think I would actually encourage others to look at both ideas. Maybe it's a slight shift of nuance. I don't think they're much different. Because I think it's looking at it in a different way. One versus sort of pulling in those the wholeness is, to me, the pulling in the places that aren't speaking, pulling in the places within ourselves where we've had them shut down from past pain, trauma, screwy things we've done, etc. And it takes the unconditional love of self to be able to do that. So it's almost like two sides of the same coin, I think.
Something I would love to share, and unconditional love is actually, that's a statement that I use often, because if we begin at the point of our learning, so for most of us, what we learned was that unconditional love means, as an example, being willing to give the shirt off your back. Right? That's fair. That's what most of us learn. To love unconditionally means to be willing to give the shirt off your back. But sometimes loving unconditionally means being willing not to give the shirt off your back, so that person can find that they have the courage and the strength and capacity to put their own shirt on, to find their own shirt and to put it on. And so the question becomes, how do we know which action is of unconditional love? And the only way we know that is by the way it feels. Either it feels contracting, like, I have to do this because that's unconditional love, or it feels like expansive. This is it. So you can have two different actions that come from the same unconditional love in the same circumstances. And the only way we know is whether we have that feeling of expansion or contraction. I don't know, something like that's, I'm just an actress. Go ahead, Dale.
No, it was perfect. Well, it was perfect because I didn't know you were acting. So
no,
It
I'm
was,
only trained up in acting.
No. It's the same. I think there's certain ideas I have that that work for me, and there's other people are like the word surrender we talked about last week. Some people love that, and other people are like, excuse me, fuck that. I mean, like, surrender, no. And I'm like, okay, how about submit? No, submit and surrender. It's two different things. And you start feeling your way through and understand that there's no, it's all, those are all fingers pointing at the moon.
And our reference points are so different. They're
very much.
They're so different.
Very much so.
That's what I think is difficult to teach. It's like our guidance system has to be something different than what's external, because our points of entry are taught from outside, and we have to come inside and learn a new guidance system.
Remember repent a couple of weeks ago, that's a 180-degree turn from focusing on the world to within.
Yeah.
And that's sounds easy, but in a real world application, it's not necessarily always so. Yeah. Anybody else have anything you want to throw into the pot?
I have a few things, but I think that when we think of outside, there's two ways to look at it. It's societal conditioning, but then there's nature, right? And there's the universal laws and how animals instinctually. So there's two different ways to look at outside.
That's awesome. I'm so glad you're saying that. That's
distinction.
Societal is one thing. That is, I have to put that aside. But there's so much to learn from nature and the universe and animals and trees and everything else.
It's such a root of my life, and thank you, because it's a funny thing that's like you just opened a new chapter in my brain. It's like it's nature is such a vital root for me.
It's
and
an example of the
I never
being,
thought
not
to
the
make
thinking.
thought to make the distinction like that, and that's big.
Well, payback, Dale. You've been
Was that a threat, or are you saying thank you? No.
No, very much thank you. Very much thank you. I first heard you share in Annapolis at an Acts with his name will come to me.
Bob Simon.
Bob Simon.
Yeah.
Blew my mind. Both of you blew my mind. But I love this idea of perfection and no flaws. And you had a YouTube video up a little while ago where you talked about tebuta, gratitude and grace. And now this has been resonating with me since I saw it, and I've watched it probably 5 times. But now tonight, though, this idea of whole love brings about with it a peace, right? And well, actually, in Nia, when you were talking about a fall from grace, right? I went back to this gratitude and grace. When I feel like I've fallen from grace and I'm caught up in the world again, I've lost my sense of gratitude. I've lost my sense of which outer world am I focusing on? I'm back in this societal bullshit learned crap, instead of.
You lose your orientation.
Yeah, instead of instinctual humanity. Stephen Jenkinson talks about we are the only species where we have humanity as describing what a good human would be. We don't have to describe how lions act, right? Because they don't act either like a lion or like a rabbit. They're always a lion. But humans, we don't always act humane. So there's that distinction. But anyway, real quick for tonight, this perfect love that you talk about, when I'm in this space with me and with others, just like when we're in this, you said it so beautifully in that video, when we're in this state of gratitude, we generate this grace. It's not something bestowed upon the weak and the wretched, like the song says. When I'm in this state of perfect love and peace, I'm in bliss. It's blissful. And so anyway, thank you so much.
I'll add a little to that. One is, I believe what I say is essentially it's like, that the gratitude isn't just bestowed upon the lowly, it's awakened through a grateful heart. And it's amazing with humanity because the sound hue in the ancient teachings meant quality. There's lots of hues behind me. You think quality of color. Man comes in the sound manus, which means hand. And if you think about the quality of human being that which can reach out, there's something Wayne used to say all the time, Dyer, and he talked about how there's this vision, and I don't know where he got it from. He was this like repository. In one conversation, he'd have 30 quotes, and I'd be like, I have no idea what's yours or what's anybody else's, but that's okay. But he talked about how hell was all these people with really long arms and huge utensils. And they couldn't eat, they couldn't feed. And heaven, it was exactly the same thing, really long arms, long utensils, but they learned to feed each other. And it was like, amazing. And that's how, bias in the brain, how it works. And that stuff hides right in plain sight a lot of times. And then when you start wrapping in, that was huge though, the distinction of that which, and it's funny because, and I've been, Nia and I have been on hikes before where it's like, you almost lose sense of what's outside and what's inside. And you can spend 20 minutes looking at a rock, and it's incredible that it's exactly what Nia was saying earlier. It's all about your perception. It's about your perspective in so many ways. And that's going to change in every present moment. It's never the same from one moment to the next. It's big. Anybody else have something you would like to share? Except Mike Ormond. No, I'm just kidding.
No, see you later. I'm out of here. Sorry.
Hi, Mike.
You were talking about Wayne Dyer. He says, remain the candle flame that never flickers, or the worst because before you. I don't know if you talked about this teaching, but you were talking, you said, love your enemy as yourself. Maybe you can go into that a little bit.
Yeah, I actually, that was a little earlier. We did that a couple weeks ago too, but it's definitely worth hitting on again. Yeah. And that's right before he says, be perfect, actually. The achebu is a form of love that the hub sound in Aramaic it means spark. It's like hitting a couple rocks together or a couple of sticks. And the u sound is like ing in English. So chebu or achebu is creating a spark and fanning a flame. In other words, it's not the love you have for a child or somebody like that. This is not that kind of deep love that's just there and it's always there. This is the kind of love that you have and you intentionally. It's an intentional love, either for self or others, where you have to create that spark and fan the flame. And it's amazing because I don't know how deep we really went into it a couple of weeks ago, but the word enemy, there's really not a word for enemy in Aramaic. It was laboyod bubaikun. And what that word actually means is to restrict. It means to constrict, almost like you're choking air off. And that's exactly what we do. We stop breathing. And if you bring that into what's the unforgivable sin, that's how we lock these places down within ourselves, is when it starts to come up and it doesn't feel good, or in the situation when it's actually happening, like a 3-year-old girl and her father screaming his head off at her and she's not breathing, she's locking that into the system. And these are all the little fragmented parts of ourselves that because of that stuff in ourselves, we can never think of ourselves as perfect, whatever. But when you actually get and this was one of the, I think it was the first call the second call we did was all about breath and spirit and realizing that has to keep moving, and that if rucha stops, life stops. And you realize that with the ride, and I've been working with Beth, the last few weeks. She's in my mentoring program. And I was like, at the end of the first call, I'm like, if you forget everything I said, that's fine. But just remember this. Breathe. And I do that at some of my events when I've talked to like 3 million miles an hour. Don would know this. And I realize I probably said too much too fast. And I'll go, okay, forget everything I just said and just remember this. And it's amazing, simply that. And that's the embracing of peace. That's for me. And it's funny because when I go into nature, naturally, it just happens for me. Honestly, thinking about, we got this beautiful little stream creek behind our house here in West Asheville, which looks beautiful from far away. When I get close to it, you can see all the chemicals and everything floating in it, going through the city and stuff. So my relationship with that particular stream is more from afar. But just thinking about going out into the woods, I grew up on the edge of the Pine Barrens. Mike knows this. And the pine needles would be that thick on the ground. And you would walk out in the Pine Barrens, and it was like after a snowstorm. You didn't hear anything. And everything would be muted, and you'd go out and just walking. And when I smell pine now, it reminds me of that. So, yeah. Sorry, I went off about pine trees there, but
thank you for that. That was one of my favorite teachings of yours. So
pine trees? Oh, just that. Okay.
Yeah, you piney.
So yeah, Mike, I've known Mike since 1982. We played in a lot of bands together. He's a crazy drummer. Obviously, he's a Flyers fan, but yeah. So yeah, he was there as I had already been doing some of this stuff before I met him for about 5 years, actually, when I started when I was 7 with the Bible stuff. But it was like a lot of the friends around me in high school, I couldn't really talk to most of them about this, that, all my Jesus stuff I was doing on the side, because some of them, one in particular, without naming names, would go and do this vomiting sound when I would mention Bible, Jesus, or anything. He knows what it is. But he was a cool dude though. But with Mike was the one that was there that when I was trying to figure this stuff out in my head, and then when I was finally realizing, okay, maybe I'm not necessarily here to be a rock star yet. Maybe it was actually this, and he was right there even before I met my wife. Mike's been there that whole time, and I want to say he's always been my number one fan, but I don't know if I have fans per se, but anyway, so I'm just throwing that back to him.
It's hard to believe it's been 39 years. It's crazy.
Has it? Yeah. 2021. So, wow. I love you so much. Can we go into a breakout room now? I'm just kidding. No, I'm kidding. Yeah. Total silence. Anyone? We still have we still got a little bit of time. Wow, that's nice.
So there's a concept in Africa, and I've seen a little meme or something about it, but where, scientists or whoever, anthropologists, went to this tribe and they got a bunch of little kids, and there was a tree. I don't know if any of you have heard this. There was a tree 20 feet away, and they put a basket of apples or some fruit there. And they said, okay, kids, race to that tree, and whoever gets there first gets that whole basket of apples. And these kids all ran, but they were having fun, and there wasn't like anybody was trying to win. They all wanted to get there at the same time so they could share the apples. And that's a concept. And it seems like we've gotten so far away from this tribal, humane knowledge, right? And, Dale, I love the perspective that you give me. And in the beginning of this session, you were talking about misinterpretations of the Bible. And one of the ones that speaks so loudly to me is spare the rod, spoil the child, because it's taken completely out of context. We don't have shepherds here.
Yeah.
The rod was used to guide, not to hit, right? And so I just love how you help me with all these other misinterpretations and get back to the root of what they meant, either a more direct translation like sin, missing the mark, right? A more direct translation, or an understanding in the context of the culture at the time.
Yeah, that's big. Yeah. And I'll say there's an African proverb that says that if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Yeah.
And that's big. It's amazing to me because I have a lot of people that are into my work in Africa, and there was actually a choir called Voxy in South Africa in Cape Town that took my pronunciation of the Lord's Prayer and put it in with, was it 17 voices, this amazing choir piece. But it's an interesting thing for me to see with Black Lives Matter and everything happening today. It's amazing, especially with these ideas of perfection, how what's been proven already to be the cradle of human civilization is often the most politically, and I don't want to say religiously, but politically and socially ignored massive land, Africa, on the planet. And I almost feel like it's funny because there was a point where China was trying to say that I just got through this huge set of books, all from the world's leading anthropologists. They were trying to say that at one point China was trying to say they had unique DNA, but it always traced back to North Central Africa. Always, all of it, all of the DNA, everything that they could, Homo sapien, Homo erectus, all these different examples. But the thing that got me the most was they went into this really deep space talking about how it's amazing that even the whitest of the white people walking on the earth still have African American roots. They still came from that. And it's not even just, if you start looking at that and how it's almost like we disown parts of ourselves because we don't know how to be with ourselves on some level. And skin color is just one example of it, whether it's your descent. When they analyzed the little bits of bone fragments that they still had from Hitler, and they analyzed his DNA, what was in it? Jewish. He was Jewish. I mean, how big of and I don't want to say a sacred belly laugh because there is no belly laugh when you're talking about Hitler, but in a way it's like, wow, that's kind of profound if you really think about it. But these are how these things that start in the heart that are disowned within ourselves, and we don't look at it, or even if we don't like it within ourselves, it runs amok and it turns into it's neat how it matches the color, by the way, and it just turns into our world. All these things that we don't want to feel, we don't want to admit or own. And I gotta say, and Mike, understands this. People like 20 years ago, people thought, oh my God, what is he going through? Because I went through the dark night of the soul can be quite intense. And I know Reverend Ron Roth, used to talk about that a lot. He talked about this one woman came up to him. She was like, God, you talked about having a dark night of the soul that lasted like 4 years. He was like, oh God, that's one of them. I had one that lasted 13 years. And they're like, maybe I don't want to wake up. But it's all, and I've had people, there was a woman who came up to me at one of my retreats and she was like, Dale, can't we just go around the desert? Why do we have to go through it? I'm like, you can go around it as many times as you want, but at some point you're going to have to go through it. It's just the way it works because there's no other game in town. And you do it over and over and over and over and over. When you realize, okay, I don't feel like I'm quite on the path I wanted to be on, just calibrate the slightest bit. You don't have to change everything, own everything in your life all at once. Own what you can in this moment, recalibrate, get going again. And that's the thing. We tend to think we have to bite it all off at one time and figure it all out, but you don't. And again, we're in this together. That's a big thing that a lot of people tend to forget. So. Everybody. Big. This seems to be a very introspective call. So what I didn't do in the beginning was I didn't do any toning. I did nothing. And I'm looking around for bowls and things like that. But we're here. I'm going to just offer a little bit of a tone. Let's offer a sound. You can do it with me if you'd like. The sound I'm going to that I'd like to offer, it's there in Mashalam. It's there in Shlama. It's the letter Shin in Aramaic. It just sounds like this. Shh. And I'll say that the original letter was like lips with teeth hanging down. It meant shine, sheen, or express. And I often, along with breathing, the rise and fall of the breath, I often use just the simple sound shh to bring myself back into center and think of the grandmothers and the mothers. So let's just do that just for a few moments, just a quiet shh. Wow, it's just like sitting in front of the ocean. Big. Now I'm going to do a little bit of toning, okay? Just be open. One more, and then I'm going to return to silence. Just the simple power of sound. I see at the bottom of the screen. Is it Liba? Liba, the name Liba at the bottom of the screen. Liba is actually the word heart in Aramaic. Beautiful little synchronicity there. Heart. That's pretty powerful. So I want to thank everyone for showing up, especially those that have been here every week. Thank everybody for the response to the toning program that I put out last week. That's gone pretty incredibly well. It was kind of cool that like the Udemy people were saying it's good if you get 25 students in the first month, and I'm almost there, I think, in the first week. And I wanted to throw this out too. You can just go to AramaicToning.com and it'll take you to, it's no longer 50% off, it's 30% off now. But if money's an issue for you, then just send an email to dale@daleallenhoffman.com and I'll send you a code to flatten it out to zero if you can't afford to pay for the toning program, because it's been surreal for me to get the messages I'm getting from people all over the world, like 3 different continents that registered for the program. And the common message that I'm getting back is it's such an honor to tone with you, talking about that like with me. And it's amazing because at the same time, I'm telling all my friends, I miss groups so much. I miss being in a group and toning, in a group of people, whatever. Yeah, there it is, dale@daleallenhoffman.com. Just send me and you don't have to explain anything, and I'll send you a coupon code. Also, it's the same with like my full set of products. It's like, going to college for 4 years to a college that doesn't exist. If money's an issue, we'll figure something out, email, and we'll figure something out. If you're firstborn, if you want to try to get them out of the house, maybe, no, I'm just kidding. But, and also I love, the other thing I love doing is the mentoring. And some people get skittish and freaked out about, they don't know what to do or if it's right for them. Try a call. If it works, we'll do it. If it's not right for you, we'll know from the first go. But yeah, I'm just saying that I'm truly here for you. And yeah, I first heard this song in that session in Annapolis Bob's, As Above, So Below. This is where, what is it? This is where it comes to be alone. Just like really one of Bob's like most hushed, deep, profound songs.
Silence.
Yeah, and throw that at, Bob, I'm gonna write, she wrote Bob Simon here, but
This is where silence comes to be alone.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Oh, that's beautiful.
But Bob, there was a point where I wasn't sure if I was inspiring Bob or he was inspiring me, because it was like he wrote almost an entire album, from inspiration of my work. And then I ended up in return sort of putting him in my book and quoting him a lot of times. And then at one point we lost who was said what. So that's pretty beautiful. And that's the way I feel the world works best. So
Dale,
awesome.
Thank you for today. And thank everyone. Always. It's just one of my favorite things to do is be here with all of you guys. It's always not only enlightening, but holing. Yeah, I feel more whole and more aligned, and in just because of everyone that's here and what we're focused on, that little star. So thank you so much for that.
And next week we'll dabble into the end of the world, what that means. And it's not about fire and brimstone at all. So
all right, everybody's got everything copied and pasted from the chat here for Dale@daleallenhoffman.com.
And if you're looking for the toning thing, it's just AramaicToning.com. It'll send you right to it. So
beautiful. Thank you, Dale. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, everyone. And we will see you next week.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you for listening to The Ancient Light of the Yeshua Teachings 8-episode mini-podcast with actress, musician, and author Verenia Nia Peoples, and ancient Aramaic wisdom keeper Dale Allen Hoffman. Please visit niapeoples.com for Nia's upcoming event schedule, books, and support product offerings. And please visit daleallenhoffman.com for Dale's upcoming event schedule, books, audio and video programs, support product offerings, and to join the free Aramaic Healing Circle email newsletter. We are committed to your awakening.